The world of combat sports is never short on drama. But what happened at UFC 322 in Madison Square Garden was something else entirely. We're talking about a lifetime ban for one of the most controversial figures in the MMA sphere, Dillon Danis. Yes, you heard that right. UFC CEO Dana White has officially declared that Danis will never be welcome at a UFC event ever again. So, what exactly went down to trigger such a drastic measure? Let's break it all down. It all started cage-side, moments before the main card of UFC 322 was about to kick off. The main event featured Islam Makhachev defending his welterweight title against Jack Della Maddalena. The energy in the arena was electric, but that energy quickly turned chaotic. Multiple videos surfaced almost immediately, showing a full-blown scuffle breaking out, and right in the middle of it all was Dillon Danis. He was seen clashing with several members of Islam Makhachev's team, including fellow fighters Abubakar Nurmagomedov and Magomed Sanakhov. For those in the arena, it was a sudden, shocking burst of violence that seemed to come out of nowhere, right before one of the biggest fights of the year. At the post-fight press conference, Dana White, who had a front-row seat to the chaos, didn't mince words. He recounted seeing the brawl unfold from across the octagon and immediately knew what was happening. He said, and I quote, "You will never see Dillon Danis at a UFC fight ever again. It's a definitive, absolute statement." Interestingly, White also mentioned that the UFC would not be pressing charges against Danis for the incident, but the message was crystal clear. The ban is permanent. For Danis, a figure who has built his brand on controversy and proximity to UFC greatness, this is a massive blow. No more cage-side appearances, no more cornering fighters, no more being a part of the spectacle that is a live UFC event. Now, to really understand why this happened, we need to rewind the clock a bit. This isn't just a random scuffle. It's rooted in one of the most bitter rivalries in UFC history. Dillon Danis first rose to prominence as a training partner for none other than Conor McGregor. He was a key figure in McGregor's camp, especially during the lead-up to the infamous UFC 229 showdown against Khabib Nurmagomedov in 2018. That entire rivalry was toxic, filled with deeply personal insults from McGregor, targeting Khabib's family, religion, and country. The bad blood was real, and it culminated in one of the most chaotic moments in sports history. After Khabib submitted McGregor, he vaulted over the octagon fence and launched himself at Danis and the rest of McGregor's corner. It was a full-scale riot that involved multiple team members from both sides. That night set a precedent. The animosity between the camps, Team McGregor and Team Khabib, never truly went away. Fast forward to today. Khabib has retired, but his legacy and his team continue through his protege and longtime friend Islam Makhachev. Makhachev is now the champion, carrying the torch for their Dagestani camp. So, when Dillon Danis shows up at an event headlined by Makhachev, it's like throwing a match into a pool of gasoline. Throughout the fight week leading up to UFC 322, Danis was reportedly active on social media, mocking Makhachev and stirring the pot. It seems he was intentionally trying to reignite that old feud. The members of Makhachev's team, who are fiercely loyal to both him and Khabib, were not going to let those provocations slide. The brawl wasn't just a random fight. It was the boiling over of years of simmering tension and bad blood. It was a direct continuation of the McGregor-Khabib saga. So, what does this ban really mean? For the UFC, it's a line in the sand. Dana White has always run a tight ship, but he's also allowed a certain level of trash talk and rivalry to build hype for fights. However, physical altercations outside of the sanctioned competition, especially ones that involve non-competing personnel and disrupt a major event, are a step too far. 8. Jeopardizes fighter safety, fan experience, and the overall professionalism of the sport. By banning Danis, the UFC is sending a strong message that there are consequences for crossing that line. They are protecting the integrity of their events and showing zero tolerance for this kind of behavior. No matter who you are or who you're associated with, this is about maintaining order and ensuring that the drama stays inside the cage as much as possible. From Dillon Danis' perspective, this is a major setback. A significant part of his public persona is tied to the UFC world. He's known more for his association with Conor McGregor and his online trolling than for his own fighting career, which has primarily been in Bellator and, more recently, a boxing match against Logan Paul. Being present at major UFC events kept him relevant in the MMA conversation. It gave him a platform, but that platform has been stripped away. He can no longer use the UFC stage to build his brand or provoke rivals. It forces him to rely solely on his own merits and fighting career, which has been sporadic at best. This ban essentially exiles him from the biggest MMA organization on the planet, cutting him off from the epicenter of the sports culture. Let's also consider the other fighters involved. For Islam Makhachev's team, this was about loyalty and respect. In their culture, disrespect towards one is disrespect towards all. They saw Danis' actions and words as a direct attack on their team, their champion, and the legacy of Khabib, but they were also part of the Brawl. The UFC's punishment has been squarely focused on Danis as the instigator who has a history of this behavior. It seems the UFC views Danis as the common denominator in these high-profile incidents. The fighters on Makhachev's team were defending their honor, and, while fighting outside, the cage is never condoned. The UFC seems to have placed the primary blame on Danis for creating the volatile situation in the first place. This incident also puts Conor McGregor in an interesting position. Danis is his guy. They have a long history together. Will McGregor speak out in defense of Danis? Will he condemn the ban, or will he distance himself from the situation? McGregor has his own complicated history with the UFC and Dana White. His reaction, or lack thereof, could signal a lot about his current relationship with his former training partner and with the UFC itself. As McGregor plots his own return to the octagon, he might choose to stay quiet to avoid any unnecessary complications with the promotion. This entire saga could potentially strain the relationship between McGregor and Danis, or it could see them double down on their us against the world mentality. Ultimately, the lifetime ban of Dillon Danis is a landmark decision by the UFC. It underscores the promotion's commitment to professionalism and safety. Even if it means alienating a high-profile personality, it's a story about rivalries that refuse to die, the consequences of online trollings spilling into the real world, and the fine line between promoting a fight and inciting a riot. The drama from UFC 229 continues to cast a long shadow over the sport, and this latest chapter proves that the echoes of that night in Las Vegas are still being felt years later. Dillon Danis pushed the limits one too many times, and now he's on the outside looking in permanently. What do you all think about this? Was the lifetime ban justified, or was it too harsh? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. It's a wild situation with a lot of history behind it, and I'm curious to hear your take. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of MMA. We'll see you in the next one.